I mentioned Mr. Sherman earlier, who was also quoted in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, saying, the use of the phrase Israeli apartheid is about as close, the use of the phrase Israeli Apartheid Week is about as close to hate speech as one can get without being arrested. And I'm not certain it doesn't actually cross over that line. So I'm not sure if I risk being arrested, or any of us in this room, by engaging in this activity. And then finally, there is the statement from Mr. Michael Ignatieff, the leader of the Liberal Party, who issued quite a lengthy statement, and I'm told that he has a tendency to do that. So I won't read the whole thing. But I did find this sentence, I mean, it's the same kind of verbiage you already heard from the others, but this I thought was particularly, and I hope I'm not, I know that Parliament is suspended in this country, civil liberties are at stake, and that, you know, in the United States we joke about going north to Canada to breathe the air of freedom, and now maybe it will be going in the other direction. So he says, anyway, the activities planned for the week will single out Jewish and Israeli students. They will be made to feel ostracized and even physically threatened in the very place where freedom should be paramount, on a university campus. Let us be clear, criticism of Israeli government policy is legitimate. Wholesale condemnation of the state of Israel and the Jewish people is not legitimate. Not now, not ever. I thought this was a particularly despicable statement because absolutely nobody should single out Israeli students or Jewish students and make them feel unsafe or threatened. We should welcome them here, and I hope there are I would hope that they would feel welcome in this room. And I know, and this is why I think this statement is particularly despicable, that many Jewish students have been involved in organizing Israeli Apartheid Week activities. So this statement by the Liberal leader actually unfairly stereotypes all Jews as somehow implicated in Israeli apartheid. And we know that that's not the case. Many have spoken out against Israeli apartheid and would want to be counted with us in this room who are against it. And those who disagree with the characterization or anything that is said here tonight should feel free to express those views. And I can promise you one thing, that I will hear you, I will listen to you, I will answer any questions you have, whatever they are, and we will do it in an atmosphere of respect. And I am happy to stay here as long as it takes to answer all those questions. So let nobody slander us that we came here to threaten or make anyone feel unsafe. And while it might be dispiriting to hear these stupid statements from elected officials, I can say that. We have our share of stupid elected officials in the United States. I know you're not supposed to come to another country and be critical, but, you know. You can't avoid it when you do this stuff. But look on the bright side. They all had to use the words Israeli and apartheid right next to each other. That's a great victory. And the words Israeli Apartheid Week are now inscribed forever in the parliamentary records in the House of Commons of the Ontario Provincial Parliament, and perhaps with any luck in other records as well. So that at least is historic. It's on record in Parliament. But I think there is something afoot in Canada that all of this indicates and is very serious and worth paying attention to. And perhaps you know more about it than I do. But on the Electronic Intifada, we published just a few days ago an article by Eve Engler, a Canadian author, who has just published a new book called Canada and Israel, Building Apartheid. I don't know if that book might be subject to any legal sanctions. And he writes, I argue that the trajectory of this country's foreign policy has been clear, the culmination of 6 decades of one-sided support and 4 years into the government of Conservative Party Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Canada is at least diplomatically the most pro-Israel country in the world. And we have seen that shift in terms of the way Canada has voted at the United Nations in the past few years. But I think most significantly in the decision in February of Canada to cut funding to UNRWA, the UN agency that assists Palestine refugees, and to cut its funding from $15 million a year to 0 at a time when there is more need than ever as a result of the tightened Israeli blockade on Gaza and the disastrous economic situation in the West Bank as a result of the occupation, as well as the refugee communities in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, who are facing incredible stress and who have been virtually forgotten. Even worse than cutting the funding, Canada has shifted the funds from UNRWA, from a humanitarian agency under UN auspices, towards the so-called security forces of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, who are not engaged in any sort of humanitarian mission, but who, on behalf of Israel, are cracking down on political opposition to the Western-backed Palestinian Authority, cracking down on anyone who resists the occupation in any way, who have shut down hundreds of charitable and social institutions in the West Bank and arrested hundreds of their people. And all of this has been done under the supervision and with the training of U.S. Army Lieutenant General Keith Dayton, and, according to Yves Engler, Canadian armed forces are now involved in this. Effectively, Canada has gone from providing humanitarian aid to providing military assistance to the occupation to continue to oppress Palestinians.